welcome to this episode of Quick Hits. I am honored to have my friend and colleague Tanner Mullen joining us today. Tanner is the founder of Drip Jobs, which is a fantastic CRM for painters, built for painters by a painter. He also owns Premium Painting in Florida. Tanner, thanks for joining me, buddy.
Honored. Get ready. Buckle up. It's going to be good.
So today, I invited you on because I want you to talk about communication automation. So let's start with your thesis. Communication automation is...
It's required for survival in home service from this point forward and beyond.
Required. That's some strong language.
It's required. It's required.
Right.
If you look at any business that's thriving, it's because they figured out how to communicate effectively with their customers. And generally speaking, the businesses that fail are the ones that lack communication with their customers. And that's because they are generally on the defensive rather than the offensive when it comes to even just putting out fires. You know, let me give you a good example. So we have an automated piece of communication that goes out one day after we start a project. And it's a very simple piece of communication. It's a text message. And it says, "Hi, Joanne. This is Tanner, just checking in. How's the project going so far? Are you happy with the progress?" So the way that message is timed is 24 hours from the moment the job starts. So that gives the customer an opportunity to let us know what's going on, especially because at this point in time, my business is doing 4 to 5 jobs at a time. Mm-hmm. And we don't have the capacity to be making those calls consistently. So automation takes care of that. And what we found through that message, generally speaking, is people are generally happy. But what happens is sometimes they're not. Sometimes we can get ahead of a situation before it turns into a wildfire.
But we have project managers. The project manager is checking in with the customer. Why does that need to be automated?
Generally speaking, most people are confrontational. I think you got to understand that, like, these are the customers that don't leave the review and don't say why they didn't do it. Right. So when you have a system that allows for individuals to express their frustrations that maybe they may not feel comfortable expressing in person, it actually creates an even greater connection with that customer. So although, yes, that is the project manager's job, but what I find is that sometimes I'm catching that response and relaying that to the project manager. And that's creating an even better relationship between the project manager and the customer because the customer feels heard. And again, we can approach it head on rather than
reducing the friction to identify the pain points. We found that to be true. You know, a crew leader does a walk around with a customer, and they tell the crew leader everything's great. They're happy with everything. Yeah. And then the project manager does a follow up. And they identify a bunch of things. They feel very uncomfortable letting the crew know about any issues because I feel like they're criticizing their work. When in reality, it saves us a lot of time. It saves the crew leaders a lot of time if everyone would be more upfront. So I like that. Let me ask you this at a higher level. What are some of the things that contractors are just doing wrong with their communications? You talked about, I took it, being reactive rather than proactive. What else?
Well, I think context is important in business communication. I think understandably so, people want to feel valued, especially when they're working with a business and they're paying money. So think of it this way. If a business is painting 300 houses per year, they're dealing with, generally speaking, if they have a 30% closing ratio, thousands of people. I mean, this is the nature of how businesses have to scale. So unfortunately, without automated communication and segmented communication, what happens is that we lose track of the context of the individual's specific stage of their buyer's journey and production journey. And this is very important because although, yes, you do this every single day, and this is something I coach my team on, this is a mindset that we have. I used to call it the Patriots way, right? I'll get into that if we want to, but essentially what this comes down to is we want people to feel important. So when we make follow-up calls or we send communication, we want them to think that they are our only customer. And unless you have a 1-to-1 ratio between how many people you serve and how many people are in your back office, that's going to be very hard to do without automation.
But you can't use automated communications and make it feel personal, right?
Oh, that's what you're going to start seeing here in the future. I mean, it's going to get more personal. I think the reason AI is going the direction it is because it allows for extreme contextual conversation through automation. DripJobs is a little bit different. We're not quite full AI. We understand the very simple, dynamic of, hey, customer has a proposal. Let's make sure that communication relates to someone that got a proposal. And it's as simple as that, rather than, hey, Joanne, we'd like to get you scheduled for an estimate when Joanne already received a proposal 2 weeks ago. You're ruining that connection.
Yeah. And for sure, obviously I was being tongue in cheek because a lot of the way we phrase our automated messages, they're intended to come off as personal, off the cuff, spontaneous. We made one tweet to our follow-up drips, text message that goes out and says, hey Tanner, I had a few thoughts about your project. I'm a little bit tied up today, but when's the best time tomorrow to connect? And our response rate from that one text message has skyrocketed because they think, Brad has some thoughts. Now the problem is, I better have some thoughts when I get them on the phone.
You better have some thoughts.
But that made our response rate skyrocket. What else are they doing wrong?
Yeah, well, I think what you just said, right? So you have this concept of people understand that automation exists, but we want to create some sort of curiosity there. And I think we're tapping into that empathy, right? You have this salesperson on the other side who sent this text message and is like, hey, I really want to help you, right? So the way you worded it really just taps into our need to be empathetic and to respond to someone, assuming that if we were in that position, we would want a response. And I think one of the things that we've done that works really well is we have a very simple text message that goes out after our initial message, which is definitely automated. They're not stupid, right? They know that within a second of them putting in a lead request, they're going to get a text. But we wait 1 hour, and that text message is very simple. It says, does Wednesday work for an estimate? And that's it. And generally speaking, there's always a Wednesday. So we know that we can leverage that day of the week in that message, and that is our highest response rate. So to answer your question, what they're doing wrong is they're not utilizing it at all. Okay. I mean, this isn't like a globally adopted idea. That's my mission with DripJobs, is to get automated communication in the hands of every single home service business owner. But we haven't even tapped into 0.05% of the market because, generally speaking, automated communication is scary because most people are afraid that the message won't relate or be as professional as how they would approach messaging or communicating with customers. But the problem is they're comparing that to doing nothing at all. And it's better to have something in place than do nothing at all. And I think that's the gap that we're trying to close.
For sure. So what are the consequences of poor or maybe inconsistent communication from a contractor?
Yeah, I mean, essentially what happens is that the consequences are customer service goes down. And I think communication is the essence of customer service. I think when you look at any type of business, you're judging that business based on the level of customer service that business has. DripJobs can be the best software in the world, but if our customer service sucked, people would not want to do business with us. That's just the nature of the way transactional business works. So essentially, for me, it's like, that's the first problem it solves. People think that automated communication is generally just lead follow-up and lead nurturing and trying to move the needle, trying to get people to move forward. But what about reminders? What about updates? What about when you schedule a job? Like, here's one of the things I love doing. I love surprising my customers, right? Because I think what's cool about using automated communication in home service is that it's an anomaly to have a home service business professional have so much great communication coming from the business, because generally they're the ones that are thinking, man, I got to follow up with my contractor, right? So whenever someone signs a proposal with us, I mean, we have our schedule so dialed in that I'll see it, and then within, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, I'll go ahead and schedule it. And then instantly that customer gets the gratification of a start date, because I don't want them to feel that pressure mentally of like, okay, well, I signed the proposal, so I wonder when they're going to start my job. Like, so automated communication, understanding what your customer wants, delivering that, right? Sending that text message, sending that email, setting expectations. And then how about this? When that customer gets that, the next step is, hey, let us know if you'd like a color consultation. They respond yes. We change a label in DripJobs that automates that communication to our designer. Designer gets the work order. Designer calls within 30 minutes. So you sign our proposal. You're getting a start date. You're getting a question that's contextual. You're getting a triggered message sent to the designer with a work order, and the designer calls you within, I'd say, maybe 2 hours tops during normal business hours. That whole experience happens. And you know what that really does, though? You know what that does is when our crew walks in the door, the pressure gauge is down, right? And I think for us in the office, we need to be considerate of that, right? We need to understand that, like, dude, this is how I see it. I'm a little nuts, but I see that I'm sending my team into battle. You know what I'm saying? And I want to make sure that they come into battle with honor, right? Rather than, a customer already having the scorecard 0 to 1 because we failed to communicate with them. We rescheduled a project and didn't consider them or their schedule or their time. We didn't update them about colors. We didn't have anything organized in the back end. So when the crew leader gets there, he has to work harder to build that trust with the customer, right? So this is a deep topic, a very important topic, and there's no other answer than automation.
Yeah, I love the customer service piece. We kind of operate with that same methodology where every person that interacts with one of our potential clients or customers, they're setting the stage for the next person. They're performing at such a high level that you're not walking into a customer that's already pissed off and looking for reasons to be upset.
Right.
That's really important. And I would even back up another consequence I see of the bad communication, and what I've really loved about Drip Jobs for us is you're missing out on sales. You don't.
That's another element.
My sales process, I can fight with a lot of guys in our industry about in-home presentations, closing on the spot versus emailing and following up. I can show you my stats: 45% close rate with 0 in-home presentations.
Unbelievable.
And almost 0 intentional follow-ups. It's just the drips.
Your salespeople aren't doing in-home presentations.
Well, my salespeople are. I'm talking about.
Oh, you're not.
Yeah. So but it's nice. The automatic drips just go out and it catches the people when they're ready. Yep. And it's low pressure, but it's educational and it gets responses. So not only are you missing out on customer service if you don't have the communication system set up, you're straight up missing out on customers. Right?
Missing out on customers, but there's so many stages of customers. Let me run through them, right? So you talk about the sales pipeline. I want to give value for this podcast. And if this is new to you, the reason it can be contextual is because we understand where the customer is in the buying process. We added another layer with labels that allows to get even more contextual, but we're not going to go there. We'll start with stages, right? So you have cold leads. These are people that enter your pipeline without communicating with you directly. You have warm leads, right? So warm leads is a big stage. These are people that come in cold. We reach out to them, but for whatever reason, they can't book an estimate. Got sick, don't own the house, whatever the situation is, right? Those are not a waste of time. They will buy somewhere, somehow. They just need communication, right? So think about it like this. Someone hasn't bought a house, but you have the short-term mindset of if they don't book an estimate with me right now, then, they're never going to book an estimate with me. And that's simply not true. We convert quite a bit of warm leads because we have context. We know that they're warm. We have notes that tell us what the issue is, right? Or what the situation is. And then, of course, our follow-ups relate to their specific stage. So we can say, in that follow-up, we might send one a week later that says, hey, has anything changed since we spoke last week? That's it. And guess what happens? They think, wow, that's cool. This company's actually pursuing my business. And we can't forget that is something that we want to do as business owners, is we want to create the perception that we need our customers. The minute you start thinking you don't need customers is the minute your business is going to go on a decline. You need people. You need them. And you want people to feel like you need them. And that's one of the psychological elements of automated contextual communication.
I may have you back on a separate episode to talk about sales mentality, because I would say I don't want my customers to think that we need them. I want them to feel like we want them.
Even better.
That's what I express. I say, we want to do this job. I know we're going to knock it out of the park. Yes. We want to do it. What do you need to see or hear from me and my team to make it enthusiastic? Yes. Some sales guys definitely sell from a point of need, and that desperation can be very negative.
I think the mindset internally is we need them. We know we need them. We want them to feel like we want them. But I need them. I need them in order to grow. Like, so make no
Yeah, I love
mistake
that.
about it. But the way you worded it is perfect. Yes.
So lead nurturing, you send an estimate, the estimate follow up. We talked about scheduling, moving that ball forward. We talked about job starts. You're reaching out automatic. So all that should be automated. Are there any types of communications through the whole buyer journey or customer journey that should not be automated?
Actually, yes. Review links. We don't want to trigger that unless we understand and we know that we're going to get a good review. Like, and I think that's the biggest concern for most people when we tell them that we're going to be automating that. We intentionally chose not to automate that, and that was simply because I'm a painting business owner. Some people I don't want anywhere near my Google profile. Like you're not getting there, So that is reliant upon a trigger. But still, even though it's a trigger, we're going to automate that text once you trigger it. So that's one thing. I would say also we have one stage that does not get automated, and that's because it's reliant upon the schedule. And if you don't update your schedule frequently, then we might send the wrong information. So for example, if we want to send out a message the day before a job starts and you haven't updated your schedule yet, then that creates a bad experience because you might have to call that customer and say, "Hey, I didn't mean to send that." So that's another one that we trigger manually. But generally speaking, the way DripJobs was built was that, it's like when you go bowling, you got the side rails, right? There's only so much that we're going to allow you to do, and we did that intentionally because the worst thing you can do is worse than no communication is the wrong communication, right? That's the worst thing you can do. So we've kind of nailed that down. So that doesn't usually happen, but those two things are good examples.
I think we're probably pretty close with technology that's coming out now, like with AI, that the whole estimating process could be automated. Do you see a world where that would be advisable? Or do we still want the in-person, face-to-face contact with our team?
Yeah. Well, I think the way it could be, I think anything can be automated in terms of estimating, right? We do virtual estimates. We could probably create some sort of front-facing calculator that spins up an estimate and sends out the estimate. I'm sure that could all be done, but at the end of the day, man, like people aren't buying an estimate; they're buying an experience. So for me, at least at this day and age, having someone come by and at least be a representative of the company is going to create a better experience than not, especially when it comes to a service. And the reason why is because a service cannot be compared, right? What we're doing is we're almost selling, what's called perception. So in other words, that just helps aid in the grand perception of a company. But automated communication contributes to that. And I have this kind of like this training that I do where ultimately every touch point throughout the sales process I assign a certain amount of points to. So in other words, like the ad, you should get some points for that. Like your ad that you did, that creates trust. That creates, a little bit of an excitement, maybe even just like a really great experience when someone's watching it, right? So I would give you 10 points for that, right? So, well, what happens when they fill out the form? Well, if you use DripJobs, you get an automated piece of communication. That's 5 points, right? Then if a reminder sends out, that's 5 points. Maybe your story sends out in a drip, that's 5 points. Maybe your salesperson shows up on time, that's 5 points. Maybe he educates them, has good energy, and really helps them feel wanted, that's 5 points. And then what you have is this like lump sum of points. And for me, if you take away the salesperson, you're just missing out on some points. But generally speaking, we want as many points as possible.
Sure. Love that. How about long-term nurturing of existing customers? What do you do for automation for that?
Yeah. So, man, long-term nurturing is something that we need to work on. I think with long-term nurturing, it's very important to have deep segmentation, and I think number one, you want to make sure you're maintaining a strong relationship with the previous customer. You don't want to throw them into a newsletter, right? I feel like that could kind of, again, like the best part about automated communication, the way we built it in DripJobs, is that it comes across as personal at the very least. You send someone into a newsletter, that the personality's gone. You're just hoping that you meet opportunity and time. So what we're working on is segmentation, and we want to be able to drill down and segment people based off of every piece of data you could think of. So when we do that long-term nurturing, we could say, hey, we really enjoyed painting the interior for you back in January. Just curious, are you interested in the exterior this year? or is there anything else we can help you with? These are the services that we provide, right? So we just have some work to do, but that'll be what's next. I mean, ultimately, again, like our mission is, personalized, contextual, automated communication. Can't just throw together a newsletter because that really doesn't represent what we're trying to do. But yes, important.
All right, that's all been really helpful. One of the keys to this show, this podcast, is I want our listeners to walk away with something that they can actually do, change, or implement today within their business. So what are 2 things that listeners can do today to increase the effectiveness of their communications?
These are for 2 different users. The first user is one that's not using DripJobs, and the second user is someone that's using DripJobs. Okay, fair enough?
Yep.
All right, cool. So if you're using DripJobs, what I want you to do is be a student of automation. I want you to think through your customer's journey. I want you to think about the experience your customers are getting. And Brad's real good about this. I think he even had someone come do an estimate for him. Didn't you do that? Didn't you have somebody come do an estimate for you, painting estimate, something along those lines?
Not from another company.
Not from another company. No. I don't know. You did something along those lines. Maybe it was the video you did, but whatever it is, you're a student of your customer's journey. I think one of the things that you do is you have a video after someone fills out the booking form, and like you really need to be a student of the customer's journey, because if you understand what your customers experience at each step of the buying process, then the goal is to position yourself in each step of the way in a way that's delightful. Love that word, delightful. You just want to be a pleasant surprise, right? So one thing that's unique about you, and the goal here is to separate from the competition. That's all of our goal. We want to stand out amongst the many. Is your story. All you have is your story. And I think one thing that you could do is play into that with automation. One thing that we do, especially in that estimate scheduled stage, my DripJobs users, is we send our story in an automated follow-up after someone books an estimate. This just creates a close connection. But not only that, we want to be what I believe to be a partner in the process, whether they hire us or not. That's truly who I am. I believe in that. I want to give you information that you're not going to get from anyone else, so the playing field can be equal. I don't want you having confusion when I set the standard. I want to set the standard before I get there so you can audit everyone else. So I give an email after that says the 5 questions you should ask the people that you're about to give an interview to. And these 5 questions are, subs or employees, what type of paint you're using, what's the warranty, right? Hold us to a high standard, hold everyone else to the high standard so you can make an educated decision. So again, that would be my goal for DripJobs users, is set up an email drip with your story and then be an advocate for a fair estimating process in your automation. Okay, so that's my goal, for those guys. Now, if you're not using DripJobs, what I want you to really do is reflect. That's all I want you to do. And I want you to think real quick, is the fear of change greater than the pain of what's currently going on in your business? And I'll create a very simple, you want me to give some value real quick, someone can do right away. I'm going to give that to you right now. I want you to think about how many estimates you've done in the last year. And I want you to think about how many you've sold. And if you don't know that number, that's a different problem in and of itself. I'm going to assume that number, if you did 100 estimates, is, let's say, 30 or 40. Okay. So that means that there's 60 people that have not bought from you. Now, I want to ask you a question. It's rhetorical because I can't talk to you, but I want you to tell me yes or no if you can say with 1,000% certainty, life on the line, that each one of those individuals have purchased a painting project. And if the answer to that question is yes, you're a liar. And if the answer to that question is no, and you haven't put a system in place, you're just simply losing money. Okay, let's just put it that way. Okay, like you are seeking out resources to bring in new resources. It's almost like you have food that's non-perishable in your refrigerator and you keep buying new food just because you think buying new food is what you need to do. But the food in your refrigerator is non-perishable. You could still eat it, right? So that's what I would say. And if you feel as though you want something in place, of course, I'm going to recommend check out DripJobs, because this is what we built. You are who we built it for. And, we'd really love to earn your business.
Love that, man. You are smart. You are strategic. I love the way you think. And maybe more importantly, I love the way that you act on it. So appreciate your contributions to the industry and your partnership with my company. And thanks for coming on, man.
Yeah. Congrats on this podcast. Tune in and subscribe, guys. This is going to be a really epic show.
Quick hits. All right. Take care, buddy.